Hey guys, Patrick from Dual Dimension here. It's been a while since I've said that, but I'm here with a deck tech review of something that I've been playing over the last couple seasons. And deck techs aren't something relatively new to this channel. It's actually something we've been doing for since the beginning, but it's been over a decade since we've really posted one. However, I wanted to kind of share this with you guys today because it's been kind of the culture of this channel to feature what we are playing and kind of share that with the community in hopes of getting some constructive criticism and some feedback on how to make our decks a little more optimal. So here I present my black and blue poison deck. This deck a few seasons ago, I was playing in Diamond Elo with this, and I was trying to find ways to make it a little bit faster so I could break into Mythic, but the highest I got with this was about Diamond 2. And so let's get into how we actually go about executing this deck. So ideally, I want to get some poison on the opponent very quickly. The way I want to do that is getting my Skull Dweller turn 1 onto the field and putting some poison on them turn 2. Generally, if the opponent has a creature that they're going to play turn 1, the creature is going to be usually of value to the opponent, and so they're less willing to block because of the death touch effect on this creature. And so, and obviously the Toxic makes it great for getting that poison applied. If not, say for example they do have a blocker or I don't draw the Skull Dweller, two other options as far as ways to get poison is either going to be through the Voidwing hybrid here, as a 2-drop flying, Toxic 1. It comes back to your hand from the graveyard whenever you proliferate, so it's a great bounce card with this type of deck. And another card to enact poison is going to be Prologue to Phyrexis. Each opponent is going to gain a poison counter and you get to draw, so it's a great option to play on the end of their turn. After we get our poison counters on the opponent though, we want to proliferate like crazy. And this is where the deck kind of shines in a way, and in other ways it kind of stumbles over itself, and that's what I would like any constructive criticism on. So any critiques, please leave those in the comments below. But the ways that we're going to try to proliferate are going to be ways of the Whisper of Dross, a 1-drop instant that's going to give a creature -1/-1 until the end of turn. So it can be decent removal for some 1/1 creatures. Llanowar Elves is a great one that comes to mind to kind of stop mana ramp decks. But you also get the proliferate benefit from that as well. So 1 mana even at instant speed to proliferate on the opponent's turn is just great value in my opinion, so the 1/1 is just extra benefit. Also, Experimental Augury is going to be a great option to play on the opponent's turn, simply because of the proliferate benefit for 2 mana at instant speed, with the added benefit of being able to look at the top 3 cards of your library, picking one of those and then putting one into your hand and the rest go into your library at the bottom. So it's a great dig card as well, but it's also going to, like I said, give you that proliferation benefit. Serum Snare is going to be great here as a kind of bounce spell, either for protection of like a Skull Dweller or a hybrid, but generally I would use that on an opponent's card, and since it's a non-land permanent, you could also target that for enchantments, which are very popular in this common meta. And so if the mana value is 3 or less, for example, Up the Beanstalk is a great card to target this with. You can get the proliferate benefit off that as well. If you also bounce your own creatures, which the creatures in this deck are only 2 mana or less, except for Dominus here, you're going to get that proliferate benefit as well. So you could protect your creature, basically void the opponent's spell, and give them an additional poison counter as well, which can be pretty nice too. Nowhere to Run is going to be a nice flash enchantment here, and this card is going to be some good removal at -3/-3. But the real benefit here is to have that ward ability being removed from the opponent. Bringing the End is going to be a great counterspell as well too. And that corrupted ability essentially forces them to counter their spell after you have 3 counters of poison on them, which is not going to be too difficult with this deck. When we look at a little bit more removal, Vraska's Fall is what I like to play in this deck because they have to sacrifice either a creature or planeswalker in the case they have a planeswalker by themselves. And they also get that poison counter at instant speed too, so at 3 mana that's not too bad. I used to play Spell Dancers in this deck before I move on to the higher costing spells. because this card, when you got it going, was just incredibly fast. But whenever the opponent would remove this card, though, the deck fell apart. Because once this card is in the deck, I feel like the entire deck revolves around getting this card going as quick as possible. And so I would use this card, use it in combination, for example, with Whisper of Dross. Then I would get 2 counters on it for the cost of 1 at instant speed on the opponent's turn. And then on my turn, I could attack directly, take 2 counters off, and then copy my next spell, which would either be a Vraska's Fall if they had some creatures I needed removed. It could be an Experimental Augury if I needed to fish for certain cards. It could be Serum Snare if I needed to bounce certain permanents. So there were a lot of things that the Spell Dancer could do, but like I said, once she was out of play, essentially the whole deck almost fell apart. And so I decided to take her out, and I instead went with Staff of Completion and Toothclaw. Basically both of these cards are going to start going really crazy once the proliferation starts. Query Dominus is really going to be there to keep that ramp going, because he's going to allow you to proliferate twice off of each individual proliferation that you would have regularly done. The only downfall to him, though, in this deck is that without anything here holding any counters, the second half of his ability is essentially useless, because we can't make him indestructible. And that also makes him susceptible to things like Go for the Throat, or any other types of removal spells that the opponent might have that could target him directly. And Staff is essentially here as a way to guarantee that I can proliferate. So in the cases that I don't draw an Experimental Augury, or I don't draw any of the other proliferation spells for whatever reason, Staff of Completion is just there to keep the proliferation consistent once it's on the field at the cost of 3 life. And just to kind of round off everything here, Vraska is going to be the obvious Planeswalker of choice. She's going to proliferate, draw you a card at the cost of 1 life as her first effect, and then her second ability is just great removal. I don't really find myself using her final ability that long or that many times, because generally by the time she's on the field, the opponent is close to death. She's generally just there to kind of like finish the game and guarantee the win. Now, when we look at the land sources here, we are unfortunately limited. I don't have too many different types of lands on this account for this color, but I'm basically using the best of what I have. And so the 2 that I decided to go with outside of the basic islands and swamps are going to be Gloom Lake Verge. This card is relatively new, and the benefit to it is as long as you have a swamp or an island on the field, which is not too difficult in this deck, it's essentially a dual land that doesn't come in tapped, so that gives you some great options, especially since there are a few cards in here that kind of go for 2 mana but off of different sources, so you never really kind of get stuck if you draw only swamps or only islands. As long as you have a Gloom Lake, you're pretty much good. And then the other land here that I decided to include is the Mirrex. Mirrex will be any type of land that you decide you need on the first turn that it comes into play. But the real benefit here is to being able to pay 3 mana to create a 1/1 Phyrexian Might with Toxic 1. Although the creature can't block, you can play this card or use the ability on their turn, and then you'll have a Might able to attack them to add poison to them, even as a way just to get your poison going if the Mirrex is the only source of poison that you may have. I've had some games where I don't draw either the Hybrid, the Skull Dweller, or the Prologue, so Mirrex sometimes can come to the rescue. But this is generally the deck that I'm going to be using this season. I'm open to critiques though, so please leave any comments in the comment section below as far as how you would go with the deck, what you would take out, what you would include, and to why. It's just so that the whole community could learn. Since it's the first time that I did a deck tech in probably a decade, I wanted to at least open a few packs, especially since the new set, Tarkir Dragonstorm, has just recently come out. So let's go ahead and get into these, just see what we pull. I'm pretty excited about this set. I've looked at some of the pre-release cards when those were coming out. I think I got a little excited with the mobilize mechanic. I think that's going to be, I'm a fan of really fast decks, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if the meta starts to shift. I know when the Overlords came out, they were basically a staple. So I wonder if there's going to be any cards like that that kind of take over. This could be interesting. Harmonize is another interesting mechanic that I'm looking to explore. It seems like a lot of late game mechanics are going to be pretty fun, but the Mobilize is going to make like goblins really interesting. Flurry could be something as well. Yeah, so this would be interesting. Goblins definitely would be something fun, I think, this come around. Oh, Mythic to end the last pack. Not bad. With the 2 common and uncommon, I never get mad drawing those. Never. Because when you're building a deck from scratch, you never know what you're going to need. And being able to create unlimited uncommons and commons is sometimes a blessing. Okay. And to end it off here, Death Begets Life. Destroy all creatures and enchant. And wow. Draw a card for each permanent you destroy this way. Not bad. Color scheme is interesting though. This set is definitely going to be very exciting. So I look forward to playing the set. Thanks again for checking out the video. Please leave any critiques down below. And look forward to our Fat Pack opening for the Tarkir Dragonstorm that we're going to be doing in a few days. So look forward to that review coming out, as well as more content coming through our Twitch channels. You can look for links for both of those things on our channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Again, this is Patrick from Dual Dimensions signing out. Peace.